design dev diary. I have finished editing those Swinburne videos, so I thought I'd show you today how. So I thought I'd step back and show you how I edited one part of that, specifically the screen captures. So I've got some face to camera and I've got some screen captures. So let's jump in. All right, so let's look at this screen. Here's my folder. Inside a project folder, I have a development folder. This is one particular video. So I have Audition, Premiere, and After Effects. So I've edited all the face to camera in Premiere. We can look at that another day. All the voiceover in Audition, and then I'm going to go in, or I have already gone in and edited the video and finished it in After Effects. But specifically inside the After Effects folder, I've got assets. So these are all the assets that pertain specifically to After Effects. So you can see I've got my screen recordings in there. I've got a mix down, and then I've got a final mix down. Classic designer naming things final. But really this should have been called preliminary mix down and then the final mix down. But I've got all my screen captures here. So you can see they've got numbers, and that relates to my script, the numbers I put in my script, so I know what scenes they're for. So if I open that up and drag it onto the screen, you'll see, if I get out of the way, that it's just a screen capture of what I did in Figma for that particular scene. And you can see sometimes I do things twice because I don't think I got a great capture. Let's look at an earlier one. So in this one, I'm trying to move my mouse to a particular button, and then actually I realized that the window wasn't active, so the button didn't highlight. And then I move my mouse and I realize, I'm rolling over this and it's kind of highlighting that, and I don't want to distract the user because that's not what we're talking about. So then I go back again and I move my mouse over the top so that I can get a less distracting movement towards that resources button. So there's lots of double takes or multiple takes to get something just right. But I'm looking at the scene in the script and trying to record just a snippet. I don't do the whole thing at once because I want to do it bit by bit, so that if I screw something up, I can just edit it. I can just do it again and edit it in later. So if I jump over to the script, you'll see, I've recorded everything. Everything's green, even the face to camera stuff, but we won't look at that today. But you can see the numbers here. So if I jump back to here and say screen 020 to 070, you can see that those scenes are the ones I recorded in that particular capture. And that helps me sort it out in After Effects. So jumping to After Effects, let's bring those in. So I'll double click and I'll go to that file. Yeah, it's that one. Go to Assets, go to After Effects Assets, and then I'm going to bring in the mix down. So the mix down I had at the time before I did the final mix down. And then I'll bring in all the screens as well. Now, I'm going to immediately grab the audio file. That's basically the length I want. It does change a bit later when I start editing other things, but I'm going to drag that down to the new composition button and just make a composition out of that straight away. I'll even select that and press L twice so that I can see that, that audio. I might even lock that because at this point in time I don't want to edit that. I don't want to be moving that around. Now I might save that. I'll call that, it's called Navigating Figma Resources. So I'll leave that name. I'll call it one.navigating Figma Resources because I will later pre-compose that into two.navigating Figma Resources, and that no matter how many times I end up pre-composing it, I'll know that the highest number is the final one that I need to render. Okay, so now if I look at these edits, you'll notice that at the top we have the Mac status bar. I don't want that in my final video, but I also don't want to deal with that right now. I want to do the edit so that I can keep moving. So what I'm going to do is pre-compose every shot so that if there's things in that shot that I need to edit, like for instance, maybe I want to blur out one half of the screen because we're not dealing with that screen in that shot, I can do that in the shot itself, and I don't have to go back and kind of move some sort of effect with things that are moving on screen. So I'm going to pre-compose everything. So I'll just drag them all to comps. I think I could have selected them all and dragged them in and just said use multiple compositions, but that's all right. I do it one at a time. Then I'm going to drag in, I don't need to see this footage composition. Go back to, whoops. Let's double click on that again. So now I want to go in and go, okay, where is the start of this particular scene? So we're doing scene 020 to 070. So what does that say? To start, right in the design screen, we can click on this little button to access our components, plugins, and advanced widgets. So that's the first scene. So I'll find that in Figma. To start. Okay, so that's that bit there. Let me zoom in a little bit. And I'll say, okay, as I say that, it cuts to that shot. And I'll put that in. Now remember, I did multiple takes of things here. So I can't just put that in. I've got to edit the timing of it. Now there's a couple of things I want to do. I want to edit the timing, but I also want to zoom in and out to focus on certain areas. Now, it's very easy for me to default to doing both of those at the same time, but I shouldn't do that. It's not the most efficient way to move forward. So really what's important now is the timing. So first off, this shot is bigger than my comp size, and I've got a comp size that I always set up, so it's defaulted to that, 1920 by 1080, 25 frames per second, because I'm in Australia. And it's also really easy to calculate those frames per second. Because that screen's bigger, I need to be able to see the whole thing while I'm editing the timing. So I'm going to scale that down so that I can see it. And that way I can zoom in and see what I'm doing. So now it says, screen record, it says to start, right in the design screen, we can click on this little button to access our components, plugins, and advanced widgets. So I'm just gonna go, I could move this playhead, but I know I want it to start there. So I'm actually gonna instead zoom out and move that comp until I find the spot I want to start at. So I see I do it once first off and it's wrong. I do it again, and then it looks like the third time it was right. I have a little, yep. So, okay. So I guess what I want to go back to is where it starts, which is here. So it can start as the mouse is moving. So I'm going to trim that there with Option left bracket or Alt left bracket on Windows. And now let's just play it and see how it goes. To start, right in the design screen, we can click on this little button to access our components, plugins, and advanced widgets. And that's actually lined up really well. There was a little bit that was a little too early, but you know, it works out well in the end. So that's pretty good. Clicking on plugins, you can search for tools that might help you. For instance, I'll search icons. Clicking on the Icons 8 plugin, I'll get a screen that tells me a little bit about it. And then I'm going to click Run. In this particular plugin, I get hundreds of icons. Okay, so most of that worked pretty well, but once we get to the bit where I say I'm going to click Run, the video starts to lag the audio. So let's find that bit. Plugin, I'll get a screen that tells me a little bit about it. And then I'm going to click Run. I loop around once first, and then I loop around again. So I'm actually going to take the second one and say, okay, from here, I'm going to Command-Shift-D that and trim it. That's where I want to start. And from here, when the plugin loads, that is when I start looping around. So I'm going to cut it there, and hopefully if I delete that middle section and move this back, those arrows are close enough that you won't necessarily notice that it's an edit there. And that should make the time. Clicking on the Icons 8 plugin, I'll get a screen that tells me a little bit about it. And then I'm going to click Run. In this particular plugin, I get hundreds of icons that I... Okay, so that edit, it jumps a bit. Maybe I'll cut it a little bit further in. That might make it better. Let's try again. I'll get a screen that tells me a little bit about it. It's partly that it jumps to that text thing there. I might just cut past that, and it'll be a bigger jump, but it might be less distracting. Plugin, I'll get a screen that tells me a little bit about it. And it's okay. I'm not going to worry about it now. Then if I move on, I notice he says, click Run. And then I'm going to click Run. And I don't click Run for ages. So I'm going to find that where that ends. And in this particular, so that mouse movement stops about there. And this is where I should click Run. So I'm going to cut that there, and I'm going to find the point where I do click Run. So that is there. So I'll trim that, delete that, and essentially ripple edit that, but manually. So now I can say, and then I'm going to click Run. In this particular, then that disappears, and then there's a bit of a delay that happens in Figma, but I don't really need to show that in the tutorial. And we see this kind of screen incrementally loading in based on load speed or whatever. We don't need to show that either. So I can then find the next bit that I want to show. So let's find the audio for that. It is, in this particular plugin, I get hundreds of icons that I can use. I'll change the color and I'll change the format to SVG so I can edit it. So let's find that. So I move it to a different position. I don't need to show moving that. Here I've decided while I was recording, I'm actually going to move it on top of the frame so that that frame's not distracting the viewer. And then I start actually rehearsing what I'm going to record. So I'm saying I'm going to change the color, and I change it to blue, and then I'm going to change the format to SVG, and then I'm going to drag it onto the screen. So it looks like that is the actual take. So let's go here and let's cut that there, and everything in between we can get rid of, and we can move that back. In this particular plugin, I get hundreds of icons that I can use. I'll change the color and I'll change the format to SVG so that I can edit it. And then I'll drag one onto the canvas, and I'll see that it's just like any other design asset. Okay, so it's slow, it's too slow for the VO. So around about, I'll see that it's just one onto the canvas. Around about here, I should be dragging it onto the canvas. So now I'm gonna find the point. I might drag a marker out. I can't remember the shortcut for that, but that's the marker where I need to drag it onto the canvas by. Then I'm going to find the point where I do drag it onto the canvas, which is by here, and we're gonna cut it there, so we may as well cut it now. And then I'm going to select this middle bit, which is way too long, and I'm going to press Command-Alt-T and get a time remap, and I'm going to keyframe that time remap there and keyframe it there. And there's a keyframe there and there's a keyframe off screen here, but I don't need to worry about them. So I just need to make sure this keyframe is here and bring that back, and let's see how that works now. In this particular plugin, I get hundreds of icons that I can use. I'll change the color and I'll change the format to SVG so that I can edit it. And then I'll drag to the canvas and I'll see that it's... Okay, that's pretty good. It wasn't perfectly consistent, but it's pretty good for this demo. So that edit is fine. Now I can drag this to here and figure out, okay, what happens when I drag it to the canvas? There's a bit of a delay. So I'm gonna go to where it appears and see what's the next bit that I recorded. Okay, selecting that and selecting that. Notice how I kept my mouse still this whole time because I know how I record and I know how I edit. So I want to minimize weird movement and things like we saw before. So basically I just want this to appear about there. I'll trim that, delete the other one and test it out. Drag one onto the canvas and I'll see that it's just like any other design asset. Another simple example. Okay, that's good. So now I've got everything from that scene. So I've got 0 to 0 to 0, 7, 0. And then basically I go into a different mode. That's why I put a pause here in the script. I go on to doing something else. And so I recorded that in a different video, or maybe multiple videos. But let's stick with this. This is essentially one scene from 0 to 0 to 0, 7, 0. So let's stop there. And what I'm going to do is I've done the timing edit. Now I'm going to select all of these and I'm going to pre-compose them. So Command Shift C and pre-compose as their own composition. And I'll call this scene 0 to 0 to 0, 7, 0, which is actually going to be the same as that name. So actually I'll call it something else. I'll call it what did we use? Icons, plugins, or plugin introduction. Okay, move all attributes to the new composition. Yep. Adjust composition duration to the time span of the selected layers. Let's go with yep. It might cause issues if I want to extend the start of the scene, but you can always fix that later really easily. But this keeps it simpler, so you see exactly how long the scene is. Now, remember the next step is to edit the zooms and pans and things like that. For these Swinburne videos, I didn't do any pans or kind of animated zooms because we didn't have the budget. I just did cuts, but cuts are actually really good anyway. I always hesitate to put animated pans in. I only do it if it's really necessary. So that's the next step. So remember, we have a composition that's 1920 by 1080. So if I want to zoom into this layer, which has been pre-composed from that, if I go into that, I'll see that this is also 1920 by 1080. But if I zoom into that, I'm not going to get as much resolution as I should get from the recording. So I could go back and turn on this collapse transforms flag, and that would fix it. But I already have animation presets that are set up for the actual size of the screen recording. So instead, I'm going to go in and I'll fix all these. So inside there, I'm going to select all the layers and I'm going to hit S and I'll get to make them 100%, which means they're going to get cropped. And then just so that we can see it, if we ever come back in here again, I will check the resolution of the movie files, and they are 2992 by 1934. So I'll go to this oh, sorry, not that one. The plugin introduction. And I'll make that 2992 by 1934. Hey, it looks like someone's watching. I actually have two watching now. One's me. Hello. Okay, so now you can see this is completely visible, and you can see we have that top menu bar that I want to get rid of later, but I'll do that later. Okay, so now I go back and I'll see that pre-comp is bigger than this scene. So I can make that smaller, doesn't really matter, because I'm going to apply an animation preset to it in 1 second. So if I go to the first scene and I play it, to start, right in the design screen, I know that the first thing I want is to see the whole screen. I don't want the viewer who's trying to learn from this to be lost at what we're looking at. So I need to show them the overview of the whole screen. Just like video editing, you want to show a contextual shot, like a little bit further out. Often that's what you want to do before you pan in. So I can grab the scale and I can find the right scale. I usually punch it in a little bit and I usually move it up a little bit so that it's centered. Remember, I'm going to get rid of that top section, so I'm centering the window itself. But I'm going to move this off to the side just to show you that I already have an animation preset that simply changes the scale and the position, and I've called that full window. So if I apply that, I get the full window, and that means that every time I do that for any shot, it's going to be in the exact same spot. So that's the first shot. Now, as this mouse moves, I want to zoom in towards that section. So then I'm just going to Command-Shift-D this pre-comp, because all the timing's done inside that. So I'm going to use this level of pre-comp just for the camera edit. Now on this second one, I know I want to zoom into the top left corner. So now I'm going to go and apply my preset called top left. And I get punched into the top left, and I know that's going to be consistently there. Then I'll play that. Right in the design screen, we can click on this little button to access our components, plugins, and advanced widgets. Clicking on plugins, you can search for tools that might help you. So basically I can wait on that because we're just looking at this section for a while. So I can go back to here, and basically here I move my mouse down, so I could cut further back for that. I might cut mid transition here and go back to full window. Animation, recent animation presets, full window. Let's see how the edit feels. Icons. Clicking on the Icons 8 plugin, I'll get a screen that tells me a little bit about it. That's okay. I could cut a little bit later. I could move those points and see how that feels. 8 plugin, I'll get a screen. I actually liked it before, so I'm going to undo that. And then when I click run, then that disappears, and then we cut to that. Now in this instance, I want to see that appear without too many different kind of zooms and things like that. So I think I'll wait till that appears, and then I'll punch in as the mouse starts moving. So maybe there. And now this one I don't have a preset for because it's just zooming straight into the middle, and that depends on what I want to zoom in on, how far I go. So I could even go kind of this far and get rid of all distracting things off the screen. And let's see what scale that is. So that's still at 95.9%. So we're actually not over enlarging this screen recording, which is great. So now I'll play that. I get hundreds of icons that I can use. I'll change the color and I'll change the format to SVG so that I can edit it. And then I'll drag one onto the canvas and I'll see that it's just like any other design asset. And that's pretty good. I could stop there, but when I drag it onto here, I actually would prefer to see the design panel settings as I click on this. So I'm going to crop it here mid-move. Sorry, cut it here mid-move. And I'm going to move this over to here. And I like to give a good buffer off the edge of the window. That lets me style things in the background if I want to, but it also means the action is more centered and it's not like right on the edge of the window. So let's see how that feels. I can edit it. And then I'll drag one onto the canvas. So that doesn't feel that good. So I probably did it slightly differently. I just probably cut in a slightly different place when I actually edited the video. But in this instance, let's actually just do a pan because that's what would work well here, I think. So I'm gonna just do a position keyframe, and then as I drop this, oh, one of my lights died. I'll move it over, and that's going to be linear. And I'll drag one onto the canvas. That's linear at the moment. So let's grab both of those keyframes, and I have the flow plugin here, so I'm going to make this like a snappy little thing. Let's do cubic on that. Drag one onto the canvas. That's a bit fast, so I can extend that out. And then I'll drag one onto the canvas and I'll see that it's just like any other design asset. That's pretty good. I'd probably tweak it a bit more. I might even make it quartic, something like that, quart. But in this case, I think it's fine. So we've basically done the timing edit. Now we've done the camera edit, and you saw how quick that was. Like most of the time there, I've been explaining to you. So it's a really quick edit when you do this stuff, and you get so much more refinement out of your screen captures. But remember, we had this menu that I wanted to get rid of. So if I go back, let's have a look at that. Did I miss anything? Let's edit out the header. So if I go back, remember I pre-comped my scene in scene 020 to 070. So let's go inside there. So that's a completely unedited screen capture. But because I've recorded it without moving the window, essentially the window is full screen, and I've adjusted the scaling of that particular monitor so we can see things nice and big. And that means I know that my recordings are always that size. So now I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I want to essentially mask this section out. And I'm just going to do it pretty, actually maybe I'll do it. Actually, here's a different way to do it. Let's just double click on the rectangle tool, and we get a rectangle shape that is the full size of the comp. This is way better than a solid, by the way. Don't use solids. This is better. Though I haven't tested the efficiency of that in terms of computation, but I always use it. That's essentially going to be my mask. So I'll rename that mask, and I want to adjust the roundness of that to match the window. So let's make that semi-transparent so we can see the window. I might even make it red so I can really see it. Okay, so now I can see the red mask and I can see the curve of the window in the recording. And I'm going to go into, might be a bit small for you guys, but I'll go into the contents, find the rectangle path, and it has size, position, and roundness. So I can really easily change that roundness to match. And I want to get it just about there. Now that's obviously not correct at the top because the top includes the Mac OS system status bar. So I want that roundness down here. So the next thing I'm going to do is right click on that rectangle and say, oh, not ungroup shapes, rectangle path, sorry, and say convert to Bezier path. And now I can no longer edit the roundness, but I have a path that I can edit. So if I go into that, I can grab the pen tool, presumably. Why can't I see that path? Okay, I don't know why it wasn't showing me the path, but I just created a new point and then deleted it, and now I can see the path. So now I've got 2 points for that roundness, and now I can just drag that section down to meet the spot that I want. So I'm going to hold usually I hold command. Why isn't that? Okay, it's option. If I hold option, it changes to the white arrow tool, which lets me select points. So now I can drag select those top points and continue holding option and drag those, oops. Damn it. No, let go of option because I need to click directly on a point. And if I do that with option held, it's going to change the Bezier handle. So let go of option, and that changes to the black arrow. And now I can drag those points down, and holding shift, I can move them to the right spot. Because it's going low res, I got to let go to see if it's in the right spot. And now let's just double check we didn't move everything. No, the bottom ones are still at the same spot. That's great. So that's it. So now that mask is created, and I can make it fully opaque, and I can set that mask to have a mode of alpha add. No, not alpha add. I'm getting it wrong. Stencil alpha or silhouette alpha or stencil alpha. So stencil alpha. Yep, stencil alpha, and it basically says that is going to be the mask for everything under it. And so this black area is transparent, and we can see that if we turn on the checker box area, we can see that that's transparent. So now I can copy that mask, and I can go to any of the other scenes because I know they're exactly the same size, and I can paste them in, and we get that instant mask of anything that I've done below that. But just be wary that this mask doesn't last the full length of this particular shot. If I go back to plugin introduction or go back to navigating Figma resources, you can see that is now gone. And so I can put anything I want behind that now, a color, a texture, a drop shadow, whatever I want, and it will work. So, long one today, but I think it's an interesting process. I've gone through a few different processes to get this right, and this one works really well for me. The only disadvantage really is if you need to edit the timing later, then because you've separated the timing from the camera edit, you have to edit it in multiple places, which isn't amazing. But with something like this, it's actually, you're not really going to edit it again. You're creating tutorials for YouTube sometimes, and you don't have a stakeholder to show it to. So you just do it and you're happy with it and you're done, and you don't come back and edit these. So it works really well, this process. Hope it was informative to you. Please drop a comment in, or drop a like, or even subscribe, heaven forbid. And let me know if it helped you. Let me know if you want to see more of this, because there's bits of this like editing the face to camera stuff, or other effects in here that I sometimes do that that I can show. So thanks for paying attention if you watch this video. Cheers.